All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Welcome back to the Talking Trenches podcast. This is our first episode of the series. We're so excited to kick it off. And the only guest we'd bring on first is the man who coached all three Flores brothers. He's going to give us a fair evaluation, rank us first to third to start off. First question here. Coach Clark, who would you put second and third between John Paul and Michael out of the Flores brothers?
What? We skipped number one already?
Coach, I'm not even gonna. We don't have enough time to discuss that on this one, but I mean, would you put JP third?
You did spend a couple of days with the. I can't get into family rivalries here, man. I don't want to go down that hole. It was a pleasure to have all three of you guys. I can tell you that all three of you were extremely committed and worked hard and left the program better than you found it in so many ways. So not only as players but as people too. So I'm going to stay out. I'll let you guys continue to fight it out, and that's always great holiday talk and material to go back and forth with. So I'll let
there
you
guys. We go. I love it. Okay, well. Obviously, you've been at Dartmouth a long time, but take us back before Dartmouth. Take us to your playing days and how you even decided to get into coaching, because you've been doing this from as soon as you got done playing to now.
Yeah, well, I had this, and it's a really long story, which we don't have time for, but I had this really unique opportunity. I graduated in December. I played 5 years of football, so 4.5 years of school. And so I graduated in December, and I had this very unique opportunity to go over to Italy and coach an American football team over there for 2 years. And it was really a life-changing experience for me in so many ways. It got me out of, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and put me in a world, just broadened my horizons. I had to learn a new language and really learn to communicate in so many different ways. But that was, we had great success over there. I was able to come back and they were a spring, summer, winter, spring, summer season. I came back, coached at Lafayette at my alma mater the next fall, and then went back there to Italy again. And I was kind of hooked on coaching. And, I just did a podcast recently for the AFCA, American Football Coaches Association, and really kind of talking about my career. And, what I realized as I'm talking about it, every move I made was because of connections. And, life, not just coaching football, but life in general is about the relationships you form with people and the connections you make. Excuse me. And I always say, be careful, who you're stepping on as you're going through life, because you never know when that person might be in a position to help you someday. And fortunately, I think I was a pretty good guy in most situations. And so when I had opportunities to move and had to leverage those contacts, it worked out positive for me. But I went from, Italy back to Lafayette, back to Italy. Then I went to the University of Maine for a season. It was basically in August to the end of the season contract. And I became a graduate assistant at Rutgers University. And then I got my first full-time job as a Division III offensive line coach at Wagner College, which they're FCS now. But, that's when you learn to be humble, because you're painting the field, you're hooking up the headphones before the game, you're washing laundry, and you're also coaching the offensive line and recruiting, and you're running the strength program because we didn't have a strength coach. So you wear a lot of hats. Then fortunately, I got my first, quote unquote Division I opportunity at Columbia University. Was there for 5 years. Ended there, left there after an 8-2 season. They hadn't done that in 61 years. That was pretty rewarding. Then I was went to Yale, took over a program that was at the bottom of the Ivy League, and within 3 years we won an Ivy League championship. Stayed there for 12, and course, went to Dartmouth in the same circumstances, the worst team in the Ivy League. And we've won 5 Ivy League titles and been there 17 years. So that's encapsulates it right there. That's me in a nutshell.
John Paul.
Yeah, that's right. I appreciate it, Coach. I would say one of the things some of our viewers have asked questions on and are curious about is how, as an offensive lineman or defensive lineman, do they get evaluated in order to make it to the next level, especially playing in some of these great institutions like a Dartmouth or a Yale?
Yeah, and look, I can only speak for myself, but we use a software, to evaluate guys and record our evaluations. But we get data, we buy data from these companies that have massive downloads into our system, and a lot of that information is scrubbed from Twitter. When you put something on there, and of course, one of the things that bothers me about kids with Twitter now is they tend to post so much about their teammates, and for us, it's about being efficient in the process. And I know I'm off on a little bit of a tangent here, but when we get a name of a kid, and a lot of it is through relationships with high school coaches too. I've been recruiting the same area for a long time, and coaches will just call me up and say, hey, you got to look at this kid, or we know where the target rich environments are, and go in there and scrub the schools that have traditionally good programs. But if you want to be evaluated, don't be afraid to reach out to coaches and provide, but you got to provide them with materials that are going to make it easy for them. You got to provide them with, number one, a transcript. If you're trying to get evaluated in an Ivy League school and you have a 2.4 GPA, you're wasting everybody's time, including your own. But if you're a 3.5 GPA, well, give me the transcript so I can look at the classes. But more importantly, height, weight measurements. I want to go, get on your Twitter. I want to see you in the weight room. I want to maybe see you doing some drills. I don't want to see 50 posts of your buddies catching passes or their highlight films. Because it just makes me work harder, to have to find out more about you. This is about you. And that's what, that's what I tell kids, the Twitter, if you're going to use it for your if you're going to use it for recruiting, it needs to be about you, not all your friends and all the garbage. Get another, handle, to use for all the garbage that you're doing. You're reposting political stuff and,
right.
this post and that post.
Right. And most kids are thinking, hey, I'm a team player. Coaches want to see that I'm a team player posting some of this. But if you're a coach and you're going through that timeline, it's just more to sort through is what you're saying.
We're not paying any attention to that stuff. In fact, it's aggravating, so, but, I want to go in there. Yeah. I want to see you doing a squat. I want to see you doing some movement drills. And I used to email kids a list of things that, send me a video, or post it so I can see it. And then ultimately it's about evaluating your tape and look, anybody, if you play 10 games in high school, anybody can find 30 good plays. Okay. So I have a 10-point checklist that I'm looking at. And it starts with your stance. If you've got a stance where your knees are pointing, east and west, and you're trying to go north and south, dude, I'm turning off the tape, because, I've evaluated 450 kids since September 1st, in the 2027 class. And, I'm trying to narrow it down. And then so it's your stance, it's your get off, it's your footwork, and its base. It's do you stand up? Are you coming out with a flat back? Can you keep your back arched? Can you get your hands inside? So I have a 10-point checklist, and, I'm mentally rating you in all these 10 points. And then, there's guys that were saying, okay, he's a down the road guy and nobody should ever be discouraged if a coach calls you up and say, we got some kids in front of you, because I know just everybody thinks it's January right now and it's late. It's early for us. Like, I can't even get you evaluated academically until the middle of the summer, like definitively evaluated. Now, look, I've been doing this long enough that I can tell you, I can look at a transcript and have a decent idea of whether or not you're going to fit our profile. But, even all these kids that have offers, are the offers really committable? You get an offer, hey, tell the coach I want to commit today. And all of a sudden you're going to see some people crawfishing on you, so it's all BS. So many of the offers that you see, they don't mean anything. So, you got to keep pinging people, and you got to keep,
right,
moving your stuff forward. But figure out what your goals are.
Yeah. So let's say you do get a young lineman, and you've done this for years and years and years. Has it changed, like, what high school linemen need to work on the most, or are there like top three things most high schoolers that you get in your program need to develop as soon as they get to college?
Yeah, that's a great question, because, as we were talking about earlier, I go into, when I sit down with a kid, I ask them, okay, what's your top run play? And you're the left guard. And, okay, so what's your rule? What's your assignment? Okay. And now I'm starting to get a picture of how a kid's being coached. Okay. And so now he gives me his assignment, and I say, okay, what's the technique? What's the footwork? What's the targeting? Where are your eyes? What's the hand placement? What if the guy goes inside? What do you do? So then you start to get a bigger picture of, is he being coached? And unfortunately for some kids out there, the O-line coach may be the math teacher that never played football before. And he's just saying, well, just block him. Well, so now you understand, like, okay, this kid has talent, but he's not being taught anything, as opposed to, well, the kid is borderline talent, but he's getting coached up because the O-line coach there is a former NFL player whose son also plays at the school, so there's so many different levels of that. But yeah, the thing that, I would say for high school kids, their biggest weakness is they don't know how to use their hands. Their hands are so bad. And can they get their hands inside? Can they get their elbows inside? Can they start to, create extension through the block? Because when you're on somebody and you have extension on them, you're more powerful than you are, when you're right in here and face into chest type of. So they just don't do a great job of using their hands. And then I get into the, I ask kids, well, what are you being taught in pass protection? And it's, I can't tell you the number of drills I see where everybody's punching a med ball with two hands at the same time. It drives me nuts because it's so unrealistic. It never happens and succeeds. Like, you could do it, but you're going to get beat 8 out of 10 times if two hands hit the guy at the same time. So, are people teaching independent hands? So, yeah. And then, part of this is natural, a little bit of God-given ability, but can they arch their back through the block? Can they create that arch that allows you to bring your hips? And so those are the biggest weaknesses of some kids. Unfortunately for some guys, kid's 6'6" and he's playing against a kid that's 5'10". It's hard. He's just going to run him over. He doesn't have to have any technique or talent. So you have to, like, what you do now is you got to get into the game tape, and we have access to their huddle. And two things: does the energy that he plays with in the game match the energy that I saw on the highlight tape? Like, is he showing that same effort level? Or, and does he know who to block? Because I've seen kids spin around in circles on game tape with no idea who to block. And then, are you consistently showing those techniques and those those things I'm looking for on tape, those 10 markers. So,
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, Coach. And just want to touch on two things that you really helped me on, and how you see it when you're trying to develop a guy. One, for me coming into college, I didn't know the difference between 3 and 4 down, and the other one was how physically ready your body is for the college game. And can you touch on that, especially being up front and the importance of knowing your assignment and being physically ready?
yeah, it's really, like I said, I try to spend a lot of time with my guys, the incoming guys, just to familiarize them with terminology that we're going to use. And now some of them never had any, wording or a buzzword for like a guard center combination. They don't know what an ID is. And if they watch pro football, every center walks up and go, 58's the mic, 58's the mic, and the quarterback's pointing it. But that is so critical to you being successful, blocking the right people. And as you guys have heard me say 100 times, if you don't know who to block, we're in trouble. An unblocked defensive lineman is a recipe for disaster and is going to lose his football game. So, look, they can't control what they're being taught, but they can control going out and trying to learn more about the game itself and challenging their high school coaches to teach them better. And if the O-line coach doesn't know it, go to the head football coach, say, we need to have terminology for this, and hold people accountable that are teaching them. So the other part of it, the physical part of it, it when and you guys know we've had a lot of success here. So we're playing mostly in juniors and seniors, and they're grown men by the time they're playing. They've been in the weight room for 2 years more than the kid that comes in here as a freshman. And so their body is stronger. They're grittier. They understand how to strike people, how to hit people. I think one mistake high school kids make is they want to be too big coming in. Be fast. Be in shape. Be as big as you can be without sacrificing athletic ability. But I also emphasize, especially more after this is something I've started doing after you guys have left, I tell my incoming guys, the areas that are most vulnerable to you physically are your lower legs from below the knee. You can't control the knee too much, right? You wear braces and all that, but certainly you're going to make your legs strong, which are going to help your knees. But jump rope, because it's going to make your ankles strong and your feet strong. You're going to avoid foot injuries. You're going to avoid ankle injuries. So you can't jump enough rope, and calf injuries, Achilles, that part of your body, because when you're 290 pounds plus, there's a lot of stress on that part of your body. And then we are striking with our hands detached from our body, and it puts your shoulders in a compromised position. So all the things that baseball pitchers do to strengthen their arms, and the rubber bands and the little muscles in your shoulders to try to secure that shoulder capsule and that joint, need to be focused on. And I got my guys doing that right now. Like, gone to the trainers and five assistive exercises for your shoulders, because as you guys know, how many players on our offensive line were wearing Sully braces, the braces on our shoulders? How many guys had shoulder surgeries, whether it was an AC joint or the labrum, putting staples in labrums. So you better be focused on trying to help yourself stay on the field, because that's going to keep you in the game.
After Dartmouth, I had the chance to work with an organization called Stryker, and so we got to see those instability shoulder cases, and I was telling the doctor where to put anchors and stuff. That joint is not secured in there very well. So as you're talking about, as for offensive linemen, anything we can do to strengthen that area around it and develop those muscles is only gonna help us. But I like how you touched on the ankle part of it too. If you had to give one piece of advice to a lineman, you touched on it. Is it better to be fast or to like try to focus on the weight room more? Like if they had to spend time developing, do they need to spend more time in the weight room or do they need to spend more field work as if you're a
You
high school
know,
lineman? Right?
yeah, it's a great question. I think it's a balance. Spend time in the weight room, but not thinking that at 16 or 17 years old you need to be 300 pounds. Like that doesn't make sense to me. You know, be 280. Be able to the faster you can eliminate the distance between you and the person you're blocking, the more success you're going to have. Okay, and you guys know from playing at a high level that decreasing that interval is your friend because you give them less time because defense is a reactive game. So I would absolutely try to find a balance. Now, the other thing that I think it's a mistake, and these kids tell me, well, I quit basketball or I quit wrestling to work on football. No, play more sports. It's going to help your hand-eye. It's going to help your coordination. It's going to help your feet. It's going to help you be a good part of your community with your school. Because if you're the best guy to be the wrestler out there for your school, well, do it for school pride too. I mean, I think that, take on that responsibility. But I hate when kids tell me, well, I quit to really because you're going to lift, an hour and a half a day so how much time can you really spend, pass setting? Now, like on air, that's not making you better. What you need to do is you need to get your buddy out there and have him pass rush you and say, I need you to long arm me, 10 times. I need you to, dip and rip across my face. I need you to club and swat and get better. And how many times a day or a week you need to do that? Yeah, maybe twice. So go wrestle. And then on Sundays, go out there with your buddies and do some football work or play basketball. Yeah, you can do it all. You're going to have plenty of time to physically develop. But you get your butt up at 6 a.m. when the team's lifting and then go to basketball practice at night. Yeah, you can do both. It's how committed are you really?
Yeah, I mean, the way we talk about it when we train kids is force equals mass times acceleration. I know you've got the engineering background, right, and the physics side to it, right? So a lot of kids try to increase the M. They try to increase the mass. They're like, oh, if I'm bigger mass, I'm going to create more force. But really what we try to focus on is the acceleration. Hey, if I can increase that A is multiplied by the M, right, to equal force. So if I can increase that, then I'm getting off the ball quicker. My mass is moving quicker and my force output's more. What happens with mass is it goes up, but acceleration tends to go down the heavier you get. So that's how we describe it. I know I got that from your background as an engineer. So
that's my favorite math formula.
Force equals, yeah. I mean, and I think you talk about it a lot, but like offensive line is really a physics and engineering problem every time.
Yeah, no doubt.
Coach, you sort of talked about it, getting that between the space between the defender and the offensive lineman, sort of on that same topic. You taught us the up kick. And being in a couple of different programs and just seeing the pocket collapse, which is how you described it, and you just got tired of years of seeing the same thing. I've sort of come to that same conclusion, but could you give us the background on where that came from, how you learned that, and how you execute the implementation of the up kick?
Yeah, so and truth be told, I've changed it a little bit in the sense that, I use it situationally now. Like there are certain circumstances that I want it done, but to your point, especially in one-on-ones, like, and it came from Jimmy McNally, who's a longtime NFL coach. He's all over X now. He's like the nutty professor out there of football, but he's the one that taught it to me, and I know there are some people out there that don't agree with it, but I think it has its place circumstantially. And, but the idea is to look, what we know about offensive line play is we're trying to get 2 steps down before contact, because that allows you to exert maximum force on a defender. Okay. And it gives you power. Well, the defense is no different. Once the pass rusher gets his second step down on the ground, he is starting to generate force. And if you are in retreat mode or, a pass set mode, a passive mode, that force is going to continue to increase through your body. And yes, you're going to get at times pushed back into the quarterback. And that's a hard thing to do. That's why pass protection is difficult. So the idea was, I used to say, take the steam out of the rush. So if you could engage him prior to his ability to, get his second step down, you would slow him down. He wouldn't, get that same force going. So the, and also it would help on the TE twist if you were a guard. So the guard would stone the 3 early and his hips would be cocked inside. And so he was able to ride the guy out to the tackle. And then when the looper came in, his hips were in great position to be able to, absorb and take on the looper. Now, in a typical pass set where your hips are slightly angled outside, I mean, we try to stay square, but as you're riding him wider, your hips are going to turn a little bit. And all of a sudden, here comes the guy around the corner. Well, now you've got to, as you guys used to hear me say, turn the ship. And the ships are harder to turn than speedboats. So you turn that ship, you're trying to get your your hips back inside. So that was kind of the evolution of and I really liked it for the guards. I really like it now for the man side guard in long yardage situations, and sometimes it's more aggressive than others depending on who you're playing. But so, and of course, depending on the player, again, you have to coach players differently based on their skills. Some of you guys remember the right tackle we had, Griff Lehman, who just had a knack for it. He could be on guys. He was like a crab. He could be on guys so quick that they wouldn't get the second step down, and all of a sudden their momentum was stunted. It was stopped. And I don't use it for every guy now, but there are some guys if they can execute, especially inside, if they can execute it. So a little less with the tackles in some cases, but I think there's a place for it, especially on early down when you want to really jump a guy. So
yeah, that makes sense. Coach, can you talk us through how you evaluate? I know we talked about evaluating the field stuff, the weight room, the movement, the intangibles. How can you tell if a kid loves football or not? Because when I played in the NFL, I'll give you an example. I played with Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers. Both these guys had no offers out of college, right? But they loved ball, so they went to junior college, just tried to go to practice, get better every day. You probably coach kids like that. Both those guys are who they are now, first-round picks, and had a lot of success. Different guy, different quarterback. I played with Johnny Manziel, had all the talent in the world, but did not love football, right? And so the drugs, the drinking, all the partying stuff, that doesn't make a good football player. How can you evaluate that during the recruiting process, and then how do you shape kids when they get to Dartmouth to try to help them develop?
So, I think you have to have to ask questions and listen. Okay, and so one of the things when you go into homes, for example, you have or even when you're sitting a kid in high school, you ask very pointed questions. I want to know about his work ethic. Honestly, I want to know if kids have summer jobs. Because I don't have a summer job because I'm training for football. Well, what do you mean? You went and you lifted in the morning for 3 hours. Like, you're gonna sit around the rest of the day and binge Netflix. Like, do something. And it also shows me about, like, you guys know I have a son at 14. He had his first job. I made him work. because you appreciate, the rewards of work. So I ask kids, what's your daily schedule? What time do you get up in the morning? Okay, what are you doing? And look, when a kid tells me that, like, I hired a football trainer, some kids hire guys to train them in the weight room. Some kids hire football trainers. I'm like, that's good, because you must like football if you want to spend more time and resources being money, for somebody to train you to be a better football player. That tells me something. Okay. Not that every kid has the resources to go out and pay somebody for that, but, okay. So what do you guys do on the weekends? So you've got to find out what the kid's life looks like. Do you watch football on TV? Do you follow college football? Do you follow pro football? Who's your favorite team? Who's your favorite player? Why is he your favorite player? Okay. So I think I say, peel back the layers of the onion on people. When it is a lot about football, do you play Madden? It's about football. Or are you just playing, whatever some of the other video games are? I want to know that there's a lot of football interest out there. And, but asking a kid his daily routine tells me a lot about him too. And then of course you got to ask the people around him, right? You got to ask the coach. And look, there aren't a lot of high school coaches out there that are going to speak ill of kids. Now, I do have enough relationships built up with some people that, like, they will tell me honestly whether they think a kid can play for me or not at our level. But it's up to me to figure out the love of football. And the other thing I want to know, honestly, Jacob, is, when I sit in a home and I ask a kid a question, if his mom is answering for me or his dad are answering for him and his dad is answering for him, I got a problem. Number one, I feel like saying, let the kid talk. I'm here to recruit him, not you. And so that's a warning to parents. Like, let your kids answer their own questions. I am not going to be coaching the dad or the mom. And unfortunately, some people can't help themselves. But, that also tells me that, every time the kid runs into a hurdle in life, the parents are trying to knock the hurdle down for the kid. Hey, failure is the greatest educator. Let the kid fail. You know what? If he doesn't want to get up at 6 a.m. and go to the workout, and he's going to be late, too bad. So, was there a second part of that question?
No, okay. That was great. What I heard you saying so much is you're evaluating a kid based upon how much he loves football, how much resources he devotes and time he devotes for it. Here at Trench U and with the podcast, we coach so many different kids. Sometimes we coach them for 1 hour a week or 3 hours a week. But the biggest lesson that we're trying to tell these kids is, hey, we're giving you the tools, we're giving you the resources. Now it's up to you. What do you do with it? If you want to be a Fortune 500 business owner, or you want to write, a novel, you don't just go find an expert and just sit with them for an hour during the week. What else are you doing during the week? How else are you putting that time to be effective? And those similar traits were kind of why, and I'm sure you've seen kids be successful at the next level at Dartmouth. They come in, they jump rope, they watch extra film. They're not just at football when it's football time. They love it more, and they put more resources into making sure that they are the best football player possible.
Yeah, it's interesting. Our strength coach has we have a chart. It's detached, compliant, and committed. And, part of it is, if you're going to get on the committed, he needs to see that you're doing things above and beyond the traditional, the hours that we are allowed to spend training you. Okay. And guess what? They're doing it everywhere else too. Everybody else is spending the same number of hours. So what you're doing beyond that. And don't tell me you don't have the time, because then I'm going to ask you, what did you do today? And, I mean, hey, look, I know it's college and you got to have a little bit of fun, but, don't tell me that you're waking up at 1 p.m. and, that you don't have the time to do it, or you played 3 hours of, some video game, because I know you're not studying all that time.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. Okay, well, I know we've talked a lot about the development of the player and what that takes. What does it take when you get a group of guys? Because offensive line is a group of guys. It's 5 guys working together. I mean, you develop your stuff individually, but you've been a part of some teams that have turned around their culture. And like I was a part of that, my senior class, Dartmouth, the first time in 19 years, and you helped us achieve that. But like, what have you seen from the outside looking in that changes those groups that versus the ones that don't?
Well, I think there's a little bit of psychology goes into this. It's you've got to, create a brotherhood mentality in the room. And, I think you've got to make sure that your older kids are teaching your younger players. I want my older players to be my voice to them. Because, when you come in in the preseason, I got to get you ready for, a season. So how much time can I spend coaching all 20 or 19 or whatever's in the room? But, I want the older guys, hey, go tell him how to do that. You know how to do it. And so there's that relationship. As you guys know, I also treat the room like a family. Like, we're going to air our business out in the room. And when I look around the room and I say, are you going to class? Are you going to class? Are you going to class? Because we don't check. I'm not watching that kid. I am, but I'm looking at his buddies, because his buddies are going to give him up. Because he's saying, oh yeah, coach. And I got his friend over there shaking his head like this. And I'm going, wait a minute. So I'm looking for, been doing this long enough. I've been looking for my tips and keys, follow my keys. And so like, okay, Ethan, you're getting C-. You get a C-. What's the story? And everybody knows it, because I think the peer pressure is like, look, it's not funny to be an unsuccessful student. In fact, it should be slightly embarrassing. What are you really here for? And I know it's very transactional at a lot of levels now, but kids walk away from football and they've been at 4 different schools. Like, what's the point? Are you even close to getting a degree? So, and the other thing this goes back to one of the questions, every time I go into high school now, I tell a kid, I said, look, man, if you're just considering the next 4 or 5 years, you're not for us. I need guys in my room that are thinking about what they want their life to look like 20 years from now. And if you have that vision, okay, then we're moving forward. So, and as you guys know, it's like I am trying to integrate you or connect you with people that have played and sat in your seats before you. The offensive line fraternity that we have. So, I want you guys to have a sense of pride in our room that we are carrying on a legacy. And, fortunately, your group, when I came here, it took a while to build that. And, your group won that first championship in 19 years, and it was like an avalanche after that. But, because then you set a standard, there's a bar. And, I connect guys with the people that were part of raising that bar, over time.
Yeah, I equate it to like when I went to Green Bay afterwards, the standard was that we went to the playoffs every year. And so it's like, it's just a known fact. And same thing at Dartmouth after we left, we were going to win titles, and John Paul and Michael were going to come in. And you established it in different ways where it's like the pool, the players of the offensive line, and you're building that identity. And then once you have that culture, you got to protect it. I think you can't bring in guys who are going to be a cancer in that. And you've probably seen that over the years.
Well, one of the things after the seasons, recently guys come in and, we finished that Saturday before Thanksgiving. You guys are still doing finals and whatnot, and they come in on, Monday and Tuesday, and I talk to guys. So, what is it about this place? And to a man, they say, Coach, you got to find kids that want to be here, that love Dartmouth. And I think, so my advice for any kid that's going and looking at colleges, find a place that you really want to be at, that you're going to be, because you're going to be connected with the rest of your life. So make sure it's the right place for you. It can't be just transactional because they paid you 50 grand more than someone else. Your passion for playing there is never going to be as great. And I think we've done that successfully. We found guys that came here and really loved it here.
Yeah. Well, Coach, this has been awesome. I think the kids that are still listening, the kids that are watching this whole thing through, fit that category. They love ball. They want to hear what it's like from someone who's done it successfully at the top of the game for a long time. So this is really helpful to provide these resources, to provide this advice, along with our follow-up series. And the follow-up series is going to be actually watching tape with you. So the next time we get together, we're going to throw in some highlight tape of high school kids, and you can show us practically what it looks like. We'd love to see a couple drills and you walking us through some drills that you do in college. But that'll be the next step to this, and that's why we call it the Teach Tape podcast, because we're teaching just the trenches and showing people the tape of what it looks like. So, but this was a great introduction, and thanks for coming on.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Love you guys, and I look forward to the future.